Hey everybody, this is Will here. I know it's been a while since we released a podcast. We ran into some life issues and maybe a little bit of procrastination on my part, but we're back today and we've been recording podcasts in the meantime. So we're going to release 3 podcasts in quick succession here, and we're going to call them the Lost Destiny podcasts. So the first one is with me, Brian, and Chris Bates, who's a good local Minneapolis player who runs a lot of the events now and has set up a league for us called the Kessel Run, which tracks players' wins and losses over multiple venues. Then our second episode features the whole council, along with Lucas Litzinger, the creator of Destiny, who gives us some insight into design, as well as a deck he took to a 4-0 record at a local tournament. And then the third episode, we have Chris Jones on, who's another good local player who managed to get second in 2 store championships, and he tells us about the decks he played, as well as his finals match when Brian won his second store championships. So stay tuned and we'll have new episodes up, but for now enjoy these 3 lost episodes of the Destiny Council. Hey everybody, this is Will here along with Brian, and we got a special guest today with Chris Bates. How's it going, Chris?
Thanks for having me on, guys.
So today, I think first we're going to talk about some tournaments that happened in the past week. The first one happened at Fantasy Flight on Monday. Brian, Andrew, who's not here today, and Jonathan's not here either. But Brian and I went to a tournament on Monday along with Andrew. There were 64 players, and out of the 64 players, I think there were 15 Poe Mazes. Is that about right?
Yeah, the top tables were definitely littered with Poe Mazes.
But none of us played Poe Maz. And tell them how you did, Brian.
I went 4-0. I was playing Han Ray. That's how FFG does their weekly or bi-weekly Monday tournaments. Just 4 rounds, no cut. First round, I played against a triple Death Trooper deck, running Imperial Inspection, Endless Ranks. It was a really tough matchup. It went to time, and I just kind of grinded out some damage on spread across the Death Troopers, and he wasn't able to do enough damage to beat the tiebreaker. Next round, I played against Vader Raider. Also a very tough matchup historically for Han Ray in the first set. It wasn't as hard, even with fast hands. I think he had a little bit cold rolls. Didn't really hit too many damage sides. I think he had a couple 2s, but I was able to just kind of burst down the Vader before he could get a holocron into Mind Probe. And then the third round, I played against one of the employees from FFG, I think Matt. He was playing Qui-Gon Ray. He went turn 1, Vibro Knife on Ray, rolled out both characters, and let's just say he ended up with 9 damage on Han turn 1. Pretty devastating in a Han Ray matchup. Is like if your Han goes down early, you're pretty much toast. So I tried to resource up, and sure enough, next turn I drew a second chance, and so I dropped that on the Han, and he wasn't able to kill Han enough before I started killing Qui-Gon, so I was able to take that one. And then finally, in the last round, nothing better than, of course, Poe Maz. And honestly, Poe Maz was probably one of the easier matches of the day for this tournament. But as I looked down at the top table, it was just me, Will, and Andrew, and then tons of Poe Mazes down the row. So overall, it was a really good showing for me.
And then Andrew also played the same deck, the same Han Ray deck as you, and he went 4-0 as well. I'm not sure what his first 3 rounds were, but then he played Poe Maz at the end. And then I also went 4-0. I was playing the Unkar's Misfits deck, and first round I played against Krennic Unkar, which I think I played Prize Possession on Unkar, and was able to control his hand and dice and mill him pretty quickly after that. And then I played against a Poe Maz, and that one went in a similar direction. Once I played Prize Possession on Poe's die, it was pretty easy to control his Poe die every turn, his other Poe die. So that match was really frustrating for my opponent. I'm never able to really get damage off because you have to roll Poe in first, and then you can roll Maz, and he never saw fast hands to kind of get the instant resolution. And then third round, I played a deck that was 2 First Order Troopers and 2 TIE Pilots, which can be a difficult matchup if they roll hot because my dice control becomes useless. I'm never going to get rid of his TIE Pilots that stop my control every turn. So luckily for me, had a couple turns where he rolled blanks and I was able to feel your anger for, I think it was 4 dice the first time and then 3 dice the second time. And by that time, I was taking lots of events out of his hand with Interrogation Droid. So I was able to finish that off. And then last round I played a Pomaz where my opponent first turn U-winged me, and then second turn thermal detonated me, and then third turn Millennium Falcon to Unkar, and then fourth round played Planetary Uprising, and then fifth round played Planetary Uprising, and I still managed to win somehow. I still can't believe I did it, but I had exactly enough mill off the top of his deck between a Con Artist and a No Disintegrations for the top 6 cards of his deck, and was able to finish off his hand that turn. Otherwise, I think I was dead to the claim immediately the following turn. But so it ended up being a great tournament. We all went 4-0. Jonathan couldn't make it to that one. And then on Thursday, Chris, you played in a tournament at Tower Games. How did that go?
Yep, it's Tower Games, another Minneapolis store. I was playing Vader Raider, kind of a Cheerios version, similar to the World's Champ. I added in fast hands and force speed, no lightsabers. Other than that, a lot of zero-cost events. I did rejuvenation instead of the shield one. So, pretty standard deck. First, I played against 2 higher guns, Mon Mothma, which actually was my hardest match of the day, I would say, surprisingly, just because he had every control card available to him, and he got second chance off twice.
They played Planned Explosion in that deck?
He did. He ran it. He did not get it off.
Oh, yeah.
So that I think that was his attempt was to get it off. But luckily, I was able to keep his dice down.
That's a scary prospect.
But he lasted forever. I think we went. We must have went 9 rounds. So it was pretty nasty. Then I played Jabba Unkar. It was a Crime Lord deck. Just again kept him off the resources. Vader's pretty good at that. So kept his resources low. I knew he was playing what he was trying to do. And I got the win there. My third round was against Misfits, and up to that point, he was, he was 2-0, so he's feeling pretty good, and he's a good player too. But again, I played the Misfits deck. Me and Will have played it a few times. I knew exactly what he was trying to do, and again, got ahead of him just in damage. I killed Unkar probably round 3, and once Unkar was down, the deck falls apart, obviously. And my final round was against the world champ Dan Weiser. So he's been running Palp. And Tower's the store he plays at the most. So I played him last Thursday, 2 weeks ago, and he beat my Vader Raider, the same deck, in 2 rounds. So it just destroyed me in 2 rounds. We played another match, replayed it, and he beat me in 3 rounds. So I wasn't expecting much for this week's comp, but he wasn't rolling as hot as he was the week before. I did add a few more control cards, I guess, between the weeks just for the Palp matchup. I got a really good round off with Feel Your Anger where I got rid of both his Palp dice, so that really slowed him down for another round. He only got 1 Rise Again off. He doesn't do like the Premonitions thing. He's really focused on pushing out as much damage as possible. But regardless, he paid for 1 Rise Again. And I just was able, he rolled out the last round of the game. He probably rolled like 8-9 damage on the board. But I had Vader with a Mind Probe. He was sitting on 4 health left. I had Vader with Mind Probe, Fast Hands, and Force Speed. So I was pretty sure, that I was going to hit something to get me the 4 damage I needed before he can resolve his dice. And I rolled right into Mind Probe and Fast Hands it. So it was a good tournament. I was happy to get the win. It feels good. He's a very, as everybody knows, tough competitor, even when he's not playing as Vader Raider. So it felt good to beat him.
Yeah, Palp has been doing really well in the tournaments around here. Do you think that's because there's been so many Pomazes? Were there a lot of Pomazes at that tournament?
At that tournament, I would be surprised if there was no... off the top of my head, I can't remember Pomazes being there. I just know who was there. I believe there was at least 2 Pomazes. I didn't see them playing it that night. But I would guess there was about 2 out of 14.
Quite a shift from the Monday night tournament.
Right.
I guess everybody's getting sick of playing it or playing against it.
Right. And I think there was at least 2 Palps that are nice, and we'll talk about later on. I think Palp has a pretty good matchup against Pomaz too. They definitely weren't top table. The Poe Mazes didn't make top table that night.
So if you think about it, Poe Maz has most of its strength with thermal detonator, being able to do normally 9 against, obviously the 3 character decks are probably more popular right now. 6 damage against 2 characters is still good for 1 card. If you think about the old Poe Ray list, 5 damage was your maximum output with Mind Probe, and that was only very situational. It had to be you going first, action cheating in Poe and getting that special, and having Mind Probe. So being able to have Thermal Detonator, U-Wing, both of those, I've played Poe Maz against a 3 character like Phasma list and just dealt, Thermal into U-Wing, that's 5 to each character, 15 damage. It's pretty hard to come back from that. So when you go into a matchup and you have all your damage sides going reduced almost by half, that really slows down the damage output from the Poe Maz, especially if they're not running Planetary Uprising.
We might end up getting this pendulum shift or pendulum swing where it goes Poe Maz beating all of these 3 character decks into a lot of people playing Palpatine, which has a pretty good matchup against the Poe Maz deck, and then once Palpatine becomes popular, then you swing back to all these control decks, maybe 3 character control decks that can deal with Palpatine relatively easily, and then Poe Maz takes care of them.
Palp's also able to claim almost as fast. I mean,
Sometimes he can, yeah.
Claim sometimes faster than Poe Maz. So that's another reason why I think Palp matchup favors them. And Palp could just do a lot of damage, as we know. So, especially that's not a lot of hit points. It's 20 hit points, right? So, Palp can do 20 hit points pretty fast.
Also takes advantage of Emperor's Throne Room. Let's just say, you give him Emperor's Throne Room, you put a holocron on Palpatine, you resolve Palpatine's dice, then claim to get the guaranteed upgrade out, and then next turn, if it's like a force throw, you can force throw on opposed dice or something like that. It just puts a lot of pressure on the Poe Maz player.
So the second thing we wanted to talk about today was some of our favorite and least favorite design cards so far. Chris, why don't you go first? So your favorite design card so far.
Is this
like?
Guess right? I go first?
Yeah.
Just your top 2.
Just my top 2?
Yeah.
Okay. So I really like Blackmail. I like the design of that card a lot. It's a fun card. As people that know me, I like mill. So that card has a 2 mil side, a 3 mil side. We know that after it's rolled out, the opponent can pay you 1 money to move the die. But with the combination with a card like Fast Hands, that interaction doesn't happen. So Fast Hands resolve the discard size. You can resolve the 3 shield side. So it's all the sides of that card are amazing. I like the fact that thematically it fits in that they can pay you to remove the die. And then I actually agree with the interaction with Fast Hands in this case. That's the one way to get it off before they can do anything about it. My second favorite card is Fast Hands, and we're going to get into I do love Fast Hands. I think it has its problems, and spoiler alert, it's also one of my least favorite cards, which is kind of weird. It's my favorite and least favorite, but it's my favorite because I think it's fun, and I think you can make some powerful decks with it. And I'll just say right now, it's my least favorite because I think it's too powerful. So I don't think it's good for the state of the game as a whole. My errata, if I had my world, would be to resolve a melee side or a melee or rage or damage die. Resolve a damage die. I think that would limit it just so you can't have these crazy mill decks. You can't have these crazy specials going off before people could do something about it. And most times, people don't want to resolve. They don't generally want to resolve just one damage side unless it's somebody like Vader who is getting 3 off. So those are my. Go ahead.
I like your choice of Blackmail there because of its interactivity. I mean, it's a card that promotes the players playing off of each other, setting up a turn maybe where your opponent doesn't have any resources. Mm-hmm. And I don't like it with Fast Hands, specifically because it breaks that interactivity.
Right. One thing you didn't mention that most players actually didn't know about Blackmail is that it's not just the first time you roll it into the pool that they have an opportunity to pay you. It's every time it's rolled. So, for instance, you roll it in and you get a blank. Well, you don't have to pay them because next time if he re-rolls it into something, you can pay them. The caveat with that, though, is that if you get a focus side and they don't pay you for that blank, then they can't do anything and watch you focus that right into that triple discard.
Right.
So, really cool card.
And good art. It's decent art. I know you guys are competitive, but but me, the bad guy, I like the art.
That's fair.
My top two favorite design cards, first being Destiny, the blue hero. It's like I call it the poor hero's holocron, because it's like a way for heroes to get that sort of like easy access to ramp into more upgrades, whereas villain, obviously with holocron, they've had that for quite a while. It's especially good with cheap cost blue characters like Rey, who has the +2 and all ones. So if you get roller out and get a one side and a +2 melee, you can Destiny and get a 3 cost upgrade. Or if you're playing like a 2 character blue hero deck like Qui-Gon Rey, you can roll both characters in and get 4 even and play something like one with the Force. So all in all, I think it really helps heroes get that kind of ramp they needed from set 1. Not quite as good by far, but it's still versatile. You don't actually have to play an upgrade. You can play any card from your hand, so that leaves it open to other cool combos.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that it's not quite as good as Holocron, but it's right in a good space.
My other favorite card has to be Ascension Gun. It's such an interesting card. It makes you really think about what battlefield you're going to play and what other battlefields are being played in the meta right now. Just to talk about the sides, a 1 and 2 black range side is always great, and like a 2 cost upgrade. It's got a 2 mil, which means it could be, and it probably is in most hero mill decks and even some villain mill decks. And then the special is kind of where it really sees the cool design factor of, do I get to use their Emperor's Throne Room? Do I get to use my command center? The only problem I have with it is that you can only use the battlefield that's not in play. If you were able to choose the one in play or the one out of play, it would leave it more consistency. That way, if your opponent chooses their battlefield and you want to use their battlefield, you can't. So that's one change I would have made. But overall, the card's great for 2 cost.
An interesting thing about that card is that it's not a weapon, which I was surprised to find out, which kind of leads into my favorite card from the new set is IG-88. So while I think he's slightly overcosted for what he does, I really like his ability, and I like that he's a 2 and a 3 range. Similar, he's got the same sides as Vader almost for damage. But then that ability is so interesting that you can get back these yellow weapons and equipment from your discard pile, and he's only going to get better when more sets come out.
What's your favorite upgrades or weapons you think about playing?
I would say Thermal Detonator is the obvious one, and then Vibro Knucklers is really good on him, as well as you can even get a Jetpack back, which can dish out a lot of damage if you hit those plus sides. And then my second favorite card is Interrogation Droid. I'm not always a theme guy, but I think this card feels so thematic. It's just, and it always seems to hit events for me. Every time I'm rolling it in, I pick apart their hand, usually because my opponents are playing their upgrades first, and then Interrogation Droid just goes to work on their hand, and it's been super strong for me in the Misfits deck. And the 50% discard side almost guarantees you, with all the focus in that deck, that you're going to get a card if you don't hit on the first roll in. What about your least favorite cards?
So I already said Fast Hands. We could go into that in more detail as well. The accessibility being 0 cost, yellow. I don't know any deck that won't play it.
Yeah, any deck that's yellow just wants it.
It's so good. So I do think it needs some kind of limitation. Hopefully the designers of the game figure that out eventually. I'm not a fan of Rey. I'm not a fan because I think she's too good. The core of this game for me, when you hear this from a lot of people, is that you do something, I do something. And if a card or ability is going to break that back and forth, it should be limited. So that's kind of, why I don't like Fast Hands, but I also love it. And I don't like Rey because, you can get 3-4 actions with Ambush.
Well, it wasn't too bad until now. There's so many that, along with Infamous, makes it almost guaranteed every turn to hit something.
Right.
Because now you can play Hunker Down and Maz's Goggles, Vibro Knife, Holdout Blaster. You just have so many options that it's pretty consistent at this point.
So it's just frustrating. I mean, obviously they can roll out some crap and they can't resolve it, and you can still win games against it. That's not the issue. The issue is that they're doing things without me being able to interact with their dice, which I think goes against the heart of the game.
It's very similar to what Chris said. Obviously, the top of my bottom list is Fast Hands. I think Fast Hands is another one of those cards that I think missed the mark in terms of what you wanted it to do. I think the principle is great. Fast Hands thematically, it's got like a cowboy, quick draw, not being able to interact with their damage sides. I definitely think there just needs to be some sort of cost associated with getting this advantage. Not necessarily of like a resource cost, but maybe, even Tusken Raider, you have to discard a card to sort of Fast Hands a die out there. He's like the OG Fast Hands guy. My change would be adding some sort of like Tusken Raider like cost, either discarding or saying paying a resource to resolve the die. And also similar to Bates, not Ray, but the new Ray in the Codex is my least favorite character, Maz. I think Maz warps the game into a sense that she's this character that, she has 2 focus sides and she's a very cheap character. So you pair her with a strong character whose dice you always want to hit a certain few sides, say like Poe, or even I've seen some Luke decks, and she just kind of makes it where, you roll out Poe, you roll out Luke, you don't get what you want the first time, but you roll out Maz, you get a focus, you get whatever side you want. So it's like, kind of gets rid of that rolling aspect in the game when you just always get what you want, and she seems kind of like this free tactical mastery in every roll, sort of like this free action cheat in the sense that you get to resolve 2 dice without them being able to do anything. So, especially when you put upgrades on her, it's guaranteed like a DL44 on her is very scary. I can't tell you how many tournaments that they roll in Maz with the DL44 and, they get the blank and a focus and you're like, take 3. And it's like, well,
right.
It feels so bad.
And I don't mind cards like Tactical Mastery or Hit and Run because they're only one-ofs. Right. It's when somebody plays a Fast Hands on me first turn, and then I have to sit there and not even play the game with them for the rest of the game. They just get to hit every turn. I mean, there are exceptions, like if you put it on Vader and you miss 3 turns in a row, that's fine. But on a character, some other character like Poe, where he has 50% shot on 2 dice of hitting a good side, it becomes really frustrating and takes away from the game. And my number 1 least favorite card is also Fast Hands, but I think everybody already knew that about me because I like the interactive back and forth. And I don't want control to become overbearing on the format. I like these cheat actions in limited quantities, and I like the excitement of rolling in on a cheat action. I just don't want to see it turn after turn and game after game every single time, and it becomes frustrating. And then I think in a different vein, the, Imperial Inspection is my second least favorite card. I think the fact that you can play it for 0 and then just have to play it with a character who has decent disrupt sides, it becomes really warping on the format. We've had trouble designing decks now that have a lot of 2-cost upgrades just because they lose to Imperial Inspection. You have to spend 2 resources every turn and get your upgrade down only to have it bounced immediately. And I think it's just too consistent to be a 0-cost card.
Especially when there's so many hero supports that do a lot less and still cost 1 resource. It's one of those topics that people have brought up and sort of one of those, probably Imperial Inspection shouldn't have cost 0.
This card, along with the prevalence of thermal debts and Poe Maz and some other situations, is the reason why I think a lot of 3-character, 4-character non-unique decks are going away. Because they can't deal. They need all their money to get upgrades out there. Usually the upgrades are getting out there 1 or 2 costs, and with this card, they're losing those upgrades. They can't. They go back to the hand, yeah, sure, but they can't play them again. They don't have enough money. Yeah,
interestingly, one of the decks that has the most trouble with Imperial Inspection is the 3 Death Trooper deck, which also plays this card usually. Right. and that the Villain Red has a ton of 2-cost upgrades to play, and they have trouble ever keeping anything on the board when Imperial Inspection comes out, and it's hard to win a game with that.
And you're just utilizing your characters with redeploys, and that's the whole purpose of it is, I play a redeploy weapon because I want them to have to go through all my characters and pass these rifles back and forth with each other, endless ranks. But when you're playing Imperial Inspection, it's like you can never get to endless ranks because you're spending so many resources recasting your weapons, or you can just never get ahead of Imperial Inspection.
Yeah, and I've had people say that you can just overwrite with a 3-cost, but that's tough to do as well because the side that is triggering Imperial Inspection is a disrupt, which then removes your resources to be able to play the more expensive upgrades. So it kind of is too good of a control card, I think, and also non-interactive, really. So one of the reasons we wanted Chris to be on the podcast today was to talk about one of the community-run events that's going on called Kessel Run.
Yeah, so obviously we're in Minnesota. We're in the heart of Fantasy Flight games. I've been playing Fantasy Flight games for years. As many of you know, there's another popular game that they put out called X-Wing. I was part of that community for a few years, and they have been doing something called X-Wing Unlimited for a few years. And what it is just player tracking. So every local tournament in Minnesota for X-Wing and now for Destiny, we call it Kessel Run for Destiny. We'll take the results from those tournaments, we'll put them in a database, and we'll just track what people are doing, how they're doing. For Destiny, we did it differently. We're doing it based on their win percentage. You also you get ranked based on the number of tournaments you played in. So eventually it's going to even out. I think we have it set to about, you get the full ranking it after about 12 tournaments, just because we don't want somebody to play in one tournament, go 4-0 and have a 100% win rate, and then they're going to be number one forever.
But you also don't want people to play in just a bunch of tournaments and have the points accrue. Right. At some point, you just want to go by win percentage after X tournaments. I think that's a good policy.
Good balance.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the plan, and the whole end goal here is that like X-Wing, they do a March Madness tournament every year where the top 32 people in Kessel Run or in X-Wing Unlimited get invited to invite-only tournament. Cool prizes for that. X-Wing last year they raised enough money to do these cool hockey jerseys where everybody had the design from the X-Wing Unlimited, and they had their name on the back and they had their ranking on the back. So that'd be cool if we raised enough money to do that for Destiny as well. But it's just something cool to keep people engaged in the community throughout the season. We have store champs coming up, which is a good reason to stay engaged. But I noticed, especially after the initial excitement, probably going into January, February, a lot of numbers dropped off for tournaments. So just because people they kind of figure out what they're going to play, and they have other things to do. So this at least rewards people for going out each week, getting games in, keeping the stores in the black, getting them tournaments to fire. That's what we're trying to do.
I mean, I've especially seen the impact just on the community. Community has been like, is this tournament going to be recorded for Kessel Run?
Right.
Make sure you send this to Chris so he can record it for Kessel Run. And I've noticed also the attendance for tournaments, weekly Saturday tournaments at the Source. 1 week was 17 players. This week was 22 players. FFG, their Monday tournament, had 64 players, which I believe might have been like the biggest one they've had.
That's a record, yep.
So, I mean, definitely, I think with more product out too, that helps. Because I mean, early on, product kind of got sucked up, even up here. Now that stores just have boxes in the shelves and people are interested in finding out about the game, it's really an open, good community and a good way to encourage people to come out to multiple tournaments.
And I think we have, off the top of my head, I think we have at least 100 people already, like individual participants in a Kessel Run. So over the last month. So that's awesome. I mean, our community, obviously, we're in the heart of Fantasy Flight, I get that. But 100 players coming out to tournaments is pretty good. So I'm excited.
No, I think that's a good way for any place to get engagement in their stores, get people out. There's also a lot of big tournaments coming up. We got U.S. Nationals at Gen Con and then North American Championships at Nova. I got tickets to both of those. I think, Brian, you're going to both of those?
Yeah, I'm going to both as well.
Are you going to make it out?
I'm going to Gen Con. I'm either going to judge or play. I haven't decided yet. I got tickets to play if I'm able to play.
Okay, that's great.
Do you think store championships before these big tournaments will have a heavy influence on what's played at those big tournaments? You think people are going to see, Pomaz is winning a majority of the store championships, I'm probably going to take that to nationals. Or do you think people are going to look at those top decks and try to test against what they expect to see?
I would say that, just a feeling, following Facebook every day and following the meta trackers, I think people really think right now Pomaz is the thing to beat just because it's so consistent. So I expect you guys, I expect, a lot of different groups to be on the hunt for how they beat Pomaz consistently. As we talked about, Palpatine is a decent choice. I think it's hard. I don't know if there's going to be a deck that wins, 75% against Pomaz. Maybe there will be.
It might end up being like Django at the beginning of the Awakenings meta, where it was just so ubiquitous, and then once things kind of settled down, you got to Worlds, and I only saw maybe 10 decks that were Djangos floating around. You just had decks that consistently beat it. I mean, Django can win, Django Veers or something like that, or Django Ball of Trooper can win almost any game just out of sheer damage, but if you want a consistent deck, you want something, like a Poe Ray or like the 4-character deck that I played. But in this meta, I don't know. Poe Maz definitely is more consistent than the initial Django Veers or Django Bala Trooper.
I was comparing Poe Maz to the initial Django Veers just for the popularity of it. But after a few more weeks, I have to give him more credit than a Django Veers. Django Veers would win out of, rolling out a lot of damage rolling out that early. What Poe Maz does is each round they're doing 4 to 8 damage. Maybe even higher than that. I think Brian probably know better than that.
Way more consistently.
But way more consistently.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, and that's why it's different than a Django Veers. Now, when people find out how to play against it, I think a general principle that maybe all of us can agree on generally is you want to kill Poe as fast as possible. You want to control his dice as much as possible. You want to remove at least one of his die per turn if you can. Those are just general principles. Obviously, this all depends on how the game's going up to that point. But if you let him get off both his specials, turn 1, turn 2, you're probably not going to prevail in that match.
Yeah, it's still tough, though, when Maz gets a DL44 to right. Control that, because then you've got Poe hitting you, and Maz is just consistently, like you said, Brian, hitting you for 3 every turn. Mm-hmm. It's tough to deal with, and then they get their planetary uprisings out, and then it's just a race to claim every turn, and they're going to be faster than, like you said, almost any deck, except for like Palpatine or like a Han Rey, can usually, if they really want to, claim faster than the Poe Maz.
I found that when you're not on Emperor's Throne Room, if you're a faster deck yourself and can dish out some damage, it might be beneficial to kill Maz first, especially if you have a decent amount of control cards in your hand, so you get rid of that consistency. Mm-hmm. They don't have Throne Room, they don't have Maz. They're praying for those 1 in 6 rolls. It's very eye-opening when you kill Maz and all they're stuck with is just roll out a Poe with maybe a fast hands, and he just doesn't roll a special, and they're sitting in there with their hand of thermal Ewing, and you're like, this game just got a ton easier.
Right.
The other tricky thing about that is the new orders. I see almost every Poe Maz playing that now, which pretty much at some point in the game guarantees you that they're going to be playing on Throne Room, my 3rd least favorite card in the game, because of it promotes non-interactivity. So I personally think Poe is the target almost every time, because Maz dealing 3, at least it's not thermal detonating you right. And anything else that Poe can throw at you.
So what do you guys think about Kylo? I know there's a list posted today or yesterday, a Kylo Baby Vader list, and I think the person that posted that list thought that it had a good matchup against Poe Maz. Obviously, theoretically, you can pull out, you can use a Kylo special to do 4 to 5 damage against Poe Maz. So what do you guys think that's the answer? Is that not an answer?
You can also use their own Throne Room too, which helps. So yeah, if you hit the 5s and 3s with thermal, you could definitely do a ton of damage with that deck.
I think it's a bit too slow to be able to ever realistically claim against the Poe Maz.
You're going to be leaving a lot of damage on the table.
You have to basically not even, I would even just say claim with Baby Vader to deal 3 consistently. Just say, because nothing's worse than claiming, losing a bunch of potential damage to claim and deal, 1.
Right.
Right. So I think the biggest strength of that deck is that it has a lot of damage on the table to start the game with. Similar to like Vader Raider, it has high potential. But it's just getting that damage out, turn 1 before, Because as fast as Pomaz is, it has bit of a slow start against 2 characters or 1 character decks. Because if you, especially with blue decks, blue villain has a lot of control. So you control one of their Podice, and then you have, they don't really have much control cards in their deck. So you have the new Vader with Kylo, which Kylo doesn't do too much damage, but he could do it if he hits their card. So I think if you get a good start with Kylo hitting a card, control a Podice, and maybe deal 6 damage with the new Vader, you're looking at a Poe with, 8 damage on him turn 1. And sure, if you kill him turn 2, I don't see how you beat it.
Yeah, I've never really been too much of a fan of Kylo just because his 2 side costs a resource, and then the special side, it has so much variance for me, and I am trying to minimize variance in almost any deck I play, so that just worries me. I mean, its special side probably hits a lot of good things against Pomaz and against Palpatine, and maybe against the 3 Trooper deck because you've got endless ranks, but those turns where you hit 0 feel really bad. Or when they get rid of their hand quickly and they have 0 cards in their hand, if they can do that before you're able to use the special. So that's my only, even though he's a cheap character, and also when paired with Vader, his 2 damage side costs a resource, but Vader doesn't give you any resources. New Vader,
Right.
He doesn't have a resource side, and also has a pay side himself. Mm-hmm. So that puts you in a bit of a bind with your resource and upgrade situation.
Yeah, the more resource restricted you are, the more reliant on cards like Holocron, or even putting in I guess Enrage is really good in that deck because you don't really care about Kylo too much. It's really when Vader dies, you're kind of toast anyways, unless you have a couple of turns to build. But if you're spending all your resources to do damage, then what are you building towards, really? So it's a very interesting deck. I think if you can get that early damage, it can beat Pomaz. But I worry about its consistency against other decks.
Okay, well, Chris, thanks so much for coming by.
Hopefully you guys have me again.
Yeah, we definitely will.
This place is nice. You guys got waiters giving me water. You got a foot massage going on. This place is super sweet.
This is spa treatment here.
This is lovely.
All right, so we'll be back next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hey,
Peace.